Halo Reach saved my life. Stick around, find out how. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me here today for a unconventional video. Halo Reach saved my life. Now the following story that I'm about to tell you guys is a personal story of sadness and triumph. And if that is something that doesn't interest you, go ahead and skip to this time in the video where the proper review and retrospective of Halo Reach will start. But if you want to hear the story, then go ahead and stick around. I'd be more than happy to have you listen. Now, in order to understand why Halo Reach saved my life, you have to know what my life was like at the time that Halo Reach released. Now, this video isn't intended, and this story is not intended to badmouth anybody. These are just the facts of how things were and what happened. Now, in early 2008, my first child was born, my son, with my ex-wife. Obviously, I was very young. I was 21 at the time that he was born, and I was still very much immature. Video games have always been a very big and important part of my life. They were something that my late grandfather got me into, and it was something that was, for the most part, pretty much mine. Most people in my family aren't interested in video games. So the fact that I had a hobby that was different, that I could make mine, was something that I enjoyed, and I took it to the extremes. Now, Halo 3 had just released in September of 2007, and the following year, my son was born. And to be quite honest, my priorities really weren't straight. I was a young guy still who most certainly was not ready to be a father, most certainly was not ready, of course, to later on be a husband. I was very selfish, and really all I wanted was to just be able to continue to live my life the way that I had before then, which was working a job with very little responsibilities in life and playing video games for the majority of the day. Having moved in with my girlfriend at the time, now my ex-wife, I ended up working at a fast food chain many of you are probably familiar with, McDonald's. Before my son was born, me and her worked together. We worked on the same shift. And I'm going to be honest, working fast food is absolutely miserable. Now, it's okay for many people, and some people enjoy it. But honestly, I was miserable. I worked in the back of the kitchen. I worked cooking the meat, making the sandwiches, and just generally, overall, I was very unhappy with the situation that I had gotten myself into, which led to me clinging on and playing video games even more to try to keep myself distracted. Now, I can't speak for sure of my ex-wife, but I know for a fact that she didn't like the fact that I played video games, much less as much as I was playing them. And I will fully admit here that there were times that I was gaming instead of spending time with my children, or my child at the time, my son. And I wish that I could take that time back and go back and spend the time with him when he was little that I spent playing video games. It's not something that I'm particularly proud of, and is something that I most certainly have learned from. But nonetheless, that decision and that representation to my ex-wife is something that would drive a wedge between us. Having continued to work the same job, working midnights at McDonald's, moved on into the year 2009 and then into 2010. As I continued to have children, my gaming habits didn't really change. Now, we were by no means poor. We were able to pay our bills and utilities and enjoy life and just do things from day to day. We always never had really any problems paying for things. But I was always spending extra money on games and picking up virtually every game that I could get my hands on and spending a lot of hours playing them. And I knew that it made my ex-wife unhappy, but because of how I was feeling with, again, still not ready to be a father. At this point, I had a 1.5-year-old and a brand new newborn, and I was working a midnight shift at a job that I hated that was severely abusive, both from customers, the management, and other employees. I was not happy, but I wasn't unhappy with everything either. I was happy with the family that I had, and things for a while seemed to be going pretty well. It was early in 2010 that problems with me and my ex-wife really kind of started to rear their head, and I started to become aware of exactly how unhappy she was, not only probably with me, but with situations in her life too. There was an incident in which I was made aware of that I might not be the only man in her life. Now, you can imagine that my having pretty much committed myself, I was absolutely devastated to the simple fact of what I had realized. Again, I was very young and very inexperienced when it came to life and the situation at that time that I found myself in, and I didn't know what to do, so I dove even further into gaming. Now, I never ignored my children. I always made sure that they were taken care of at that point first before I had done anything or spent any free time to myself. But it was at that time that my ex-wife had really withdrawn from me and from our relationship. And in order to cope with that, I moved further into gaming. I spent, instead of time with her that I should have, I spent playing any game that I could get my hands on. 2010 at the time was Alan Wake and Mass Effect 2, two games that I hold in immense regard right now, and games that are some of my absolute favorites of all time, but games that also helped me through a tough time. And in September of 2010 is when Halo Reach released. I spent every day for over a month and a half playing that game for all the free time that I had. I knew at the time that my marriage was probably coming to an end. And emotionally, I really couldn't deal with it. I was sad, and playing Reach, diving into the campaign, earning all the achievements, and spending hours in the multiplayer saved me from doing something either in the marriage or even something to myself that I would have most certainly regretted. Now, fast forwarding to 2012, 2 years after Reach released, and the same year the Halo 4 would release, I ended up finding my ex-wife with someone else. We then split, and at the time I had felt relieved, but I was still so heartbroken. I was so sad. I moved back in with my dad and my stepmother, and at that time too, a month afterwards, I'd actually lost my job. So I found myself jobless and in the middle of a divorce with 2 children and just trying to get everything sorted out. I again retreated back into Halo Reach. Not Halo 4, but Halo Reach. I was able to connect with Reach, and again, playing the multiplayer, taking the stress off of me and being able to funnel it. And it's going to sound maybe a little weird or cliche, but I took it out on the people that I played against in the multiplayer. All the anger, all the frustration, all the mixed feelings that I had. And again, Halo Reach, pouring my emotions into that game, really helped me deal with the stress and deal with the realities of what my life was going to be like, how my life was going to change. We all deal with sadness and grief and depression in different ways. Some people drink, some people do drugs, some people eat, some people exercise, which I did that too. I used Halo Reach as a crutch when some of the things in my life got to be the most difficult, when I went through some of the most emotionally challenging things that I've ever had to deal with. I've grown up and I've learned a lot, but I'll always be thankful that I had this video game, as silly as that sounds, to lean on when I was having problems that I didn't know how to deal with. Some of them were, of course, by my own doing, and I am not making any excuses for what happened between me and my ex-wife. I'm not trying to excuse what she did. What she did was wrong, and she dealt with her grief in our marriage in the wrong way too. But that is the story of how a silly video game called Halo Reach helped save my life. If you guys enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. I upload videos weekly. And until next time, everyone, thank you for joining me here for this personal story. And I'll see all of you in the next video.